not okay, perhaps.
This meeting is being recorded.
Got it. There we go. Got it. So this is our second symposium on diversity, equality and inclusion. And we've gone for a little smaller scale one today. We thought it's more like an oil check, more like a catch up, with the aim of doing something a little bit larger again last year. But we wanted to pick up on some of the progress that we've made since last year. Many of you were involved in that event in May of 2021, but some of you weren't. So I'm going to just start off by sharing with you the poem that we finished off with last time from Maureen from St. Paul's, Maureen Onawali. Maureen, I think, Pedro, you're at St. Paul's, aren't you? I think she left in year 13 last year, didn't she? And she's gone on to actually have some success. I have to get it right. She won the Poetry Slam competition at the Roundhouse, I think possibly as part of the BBC Spoken Word project. Pedro, I don't know if you know any more about that.
No, that is all I know, to be honest.
That's all you know. Okay, well, I'm going to share that for those of you that didn't say. I'm just going to use this just to ease us into the topic. And also, you need to know that in St. Paul's, the badge, the logo is a shield and a sword, purple and gold. So here's Maureen. Hang on, let me just get that again. Get the right come out of that one. Here she is coming up.
Behind every purple shield and gold sword stands a kaleidoscopic community. Here at St. Paul's, there is culture cross-stitched to the uniform. At this school, the student voice has an accent. Every mother tongue is echoed in the corridors, so it feels like I've sailed the 7 seas before period 3 and still feel like home in every other country. You see, at the end of each rainbow of passports lies a history class learning about the Gold Coast, and students with family histories that go most places where the curriculum won't. I've been adopted by a motherland which is not my own, and that is to say that at St. Paul's, we are a family of polka-dotted people with pick and mix cultures piecing together our identity. So what good is a family tree when you can have a forest of intertwined roots, a customizable coat of arms held together by colorful hands? This purple shield and gold sword is my crest, and this school is my home away from home, the only place where this Nigerian girl with an Irish tongue could ever write such a poem.
Well, that's what's underneath. That's not the dashboard there. You use that with it. But we're only looking to show, we all want to do is show the same table. One was growth, one was new business, wasn't it? One was client, one was new business.
You're on mute, Jez.
What I was getting at was how do we get that?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry, I'm going to
Did everybody else go on mute? Who's not on mute?
Sort that out. You might be able to sort them out as we go, Elizabeth. Thank you. Great celebration from Maureen of education, diversity, inclusion, the arts, the topics that we want to talk about today. So the aim of this symposium is to essentially share best practice, to see what different schools, different practitioners around arts and heritage organisations are doing, and hopefully give you a few contacts. So please use the chat this afternoon if you want to share any details. It might be that you've got something to share, a comment to make, an email you want to give to other people. Please feel free to message each other in the chat. While we do that, I wonder if you could just use the chat to introduce yourself so we get a sense of who's here today. Just say something about your role and what organisation you're with. We've got people from a number of schools, from a number of different arts organisations, different backgrounds. So that's really helpful if you don't mind. And any specific areas of interest, just so that you can begin to make connections if you want to. Some of us were involved in the symposium last year, and I don't know if you saw it, those of you that were, but the whole thing is on YouTube. And I've just put that in the chat. So if anybody wants to go back to find out what it was about, what we talked about last time, we had about a dozen presenters, primary, secondary schools, different people from arts and heritage organisations, museums, talking about their work in diversity and inclusion. And we've got a smaller group of people today, and that's absolutely fine. That's what we wanted. But do go back to the last year's event as well and share that and have a look and pick out the bits that you'd like. We've also got a website that are hosted by the Arts and Heritage Alliance, where the resources from last year and from this year are going to be held, those that we can fit onto the website. The videos we'll put on YouTube in the same place. But at some point, Elizabeth will put that in the chat as well, so that you've got access to those resources. And again, this is there from last year. And we deliberately invited some different people, different schools, organisations to participate this today, so you get a range of what's going on in and around Milton Keynes. So it's lovely to see you. Thanks for putting all those things in the chat as we go. So people don't know what order we're talking today, so I'm just going to pick on people if that's okay. So I'm going to start off. Sahel, can I start off with you? Sahel is from Hazley Academy over in west part of Milton Keynes, and has a role, is Equalities, what's exactly your title, Sahel? Equality Group Coordinator, is that right?
Yes, hi.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Sure. I'm Sahel. I'm an assistant progress leader for sixth form here at Hazley, but I'm also the Equalities Group Coordinator here at Hazley, and it's a pretty new role. It's a pretty new group. We sort of formed during the first lockdown in 2020, and we've kind of been growing ever since. So up until now, it's been pretty much a sixth form exclusive group, but as of next year, we're planning on expanding all the way down to year 9, because we feel that they've got the emotional maturity to sort of support with equality, or we really want it to be a group where students can support staff in hosting events throughout the year. One of the things that we did this year, which was really popular, was we sort of had a culture day at our sixth form. So we invited our students to come in wearing cultural dress. We served food from around the world in the canteen during the day. And we kind of had a bit of a fashion show to celebrate all of the different things that our students came in wearing. One of the things that we're looking to do is continue that on next year, but I kind of want to expand that to make it a bit more community based. So I'm looking to plan it for early May. I penciled in the 4th of May, 2023, to kind of have it to extend outside after school and have sort of local members of community, local businesses, local food trucks, etc., coming in and just celebrating all the different facets of culture that Milton Keynes has to offer. So we're really looking on building on the successes that we've made this year. We want to expand it to not just be a sixth form thing. We want it to be a whole school event, and we also want to kind of invite local members of the community to come and join us in celebrating that culture. So yeah, sorry, a very long introduction there, but lovely to meet you all.
And your work has largely been student-led, is that fair to say, from a kind of motivated group of sixth form students?
Yes, it started with, so it started in multiple ways. I actually was doing my master's, and I was doing it on inclusive education. So I was looking at implicit biases within the curriculum. I was looking at implicit biases within teaching, and then student-on-student implicit bias. And actually, whilst I was doing my dissertation, that was when the murder of George Floyd happened. And a bunch of sixth formers came to me and asked if we could set up a group to kind of promote this idea of equality and intersectionality within equality across the school. And so myself and a few other members of staff alongside those sixth formers kind of came together, and we said we really want the sixth formers to drive the events and the way in which we operate. So it became something that they took the lead on, and then we kind of supported them with that from a logistics perspective. Now what we're trying to do is move to a kind of, because we've also been working on our curriculums, especially I teach humanities. So in the corridor, we've been looking at creating a more inclusive curriculum in order to positively impact things like outcomes for BAME, LGBT, etc. students, as well as improving behavior of BAME, LGBT, etc. students. So it's been a real passion project personally of mine and academically of mine, but also we would never have taken off without some sixth formers that really wanted to make a change.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know Hazy's been doing quite a lot of work on that, sort of reshaping the curriculum around inclusion. Is it decolonialization? Is that an unhelpful term? All those kind of things. But if you're interested in that area, get in contact with Sahel or through me. I can put you in touch with people at Hazy work, and they've been presenting on that more widely as well. I realise I didn't introduce myself. Those of you that I don't know, I'm Jez Bennett. I run the Leadership and Training Centre for Five Dimensions Trust, but I get involved with lots of schools in the local and more area and more widely. And and the LTC, together with the local Cultural Education Partnership, which is called MAKE, we put together this program and the one last year. And Elizabeth Howard works for MAKE and the Arts and Heritage Alliance. So it's the two of us this afternoon who are kind of hosting for you. Lovely to see you. Thanks, Sahel, very much. I'm going to ask Fiona. Fiona, you're director of the arts at the Arts Centre. It's up in Great Milton Keynes Arts in Great Linford. That's correct, isn't it? And why don't you tell us what you've been doing in this area? Thanks.
Shall I screen share?
Do, yeah, that's great.
Okay, just. Sorry, talk between yourselves. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Well, firstly, I ought to say that we've got Emily here from Brooklands Farm School, I saw. So hello, Emily. I was just going to talk a little bit about one of the projects we've done. As an organisation, Milton Keynes Arts Centre is an organisation that specialises in co-curated projects. So we work in partnership with organisations across Milton Keynes and community groups and artists, both local, national and international artists, to really develop projects in response to briefs that are given to us. So one of the projects we did last year was in partnership with the African Diaspora Foundation. And it was, sorry, I went back there. It was a project curated by an artist, Shepherd Manuka. And we, in response to the ADF, whose objectives was to really raise awareness of cultural heritage amongst young people in MK schools. We invited Shepherd, an artist we'd worked with previously, to propose a group of artists of African heritage who could design a programme of work for young people, which would explore different aspects of African cultural heritage through art. So we worked with a group of young curators from Brooklands Farm School, so for Year 6 group. And I'm just going to have to change into my screen so I can see. They worked over 6 weeks with artists, with a group of 4 artists. Shepherd was there kind of guiding the project throughout. Over the 6 weeks, he introduced them to the artists, to the idea of the project. And at the end of it, there would be an event that they would feed into, both as in terms of selecting things that would happen at that event and also presenting their work. So first week, he explored pattern, looking at African textiles. explored how colour and in combination with pattern could be used to tell a story. And the group were invited us to work with a limited palette of 3 colours to create a pattern that was about them, so in autobiographical. So that's just showing them at work. Second week, we invited an artist of Nigerian and lives both in Nigeria and in the UK, Uthman Wahab. His work was really, he is an artist whose work is figurative. He introduced them to work of African heritage art, so tribal masks, paintings, and looked at the relationship between that and 20th century modernism, so the likes of Picasso and Modigliani. Without sort of being over-laboured on the point, he did make reference really to, obviously, to what has been recontextualised in recent times, that in my day, it was discussed as primitive art, really acknowledging that the skill in this work and that these were artists, and then invited the group to make their own work of that ilk. So using found imagery of people, he asked them to divide up faces into geometric shapes and then create their own work. So that went again back a bit. I don't know how to actually, don't know how to go back, but there we go. Week 3, we invited Levi Nadeau-Mitchell, who is an artist who works in carnival and explores carnival as an art form. So she designs costumes and props for carnival. And she introduced the group to the Moko Jumbi, which is a character that was appropriated really within the Caribbean, supposedly sort of carried people from Africa across the Caribbean to look after them in the from Africa rather to the Caribbean, is a protective figure. And when slavery came to an end, there were celebrations using the Moko Jumbi as an iconic figure of protection and liberation. So using that figure as a starting point, the groups were asked to think about what the Moko Jumbi might wear and to design shoes for him or her. And so the groups really through that were introduced to the idea of migration, globalization. They were again sort of touched upon ideas of global slave trade, the Windrush generation, but in a sort of art context, and made some big shoes. Pictures of which. We did some further work with Shepherd back at the Art Centre as their work progressed, and then began to introduce the ideas of curation and what the final event would be. And then with Zeto Maseko, they were introduced to weaving, which was the most technical of the exercises for the group. But actually, and there was a divide, I would say, in terms of gender, along largely gender lines regarding who took to it and who didn't, but actually produced some rather lovely weavings in that period. Over the whole 6 weeks, Shepherd was asking the group what they'd learnt. We just found the group really amazing. They were so intelligent, so responsive, really engaged with the work, taking on ideas. They learnt a lot more than we'd anticipated and much more very sophisticated in terms of their learning. They're really a delight to work with. And the response we had was overwhelmingly positive, all asking for more. So I remember right at the beginning, we just discussed with the school the length of the sessions, and initially it was felt that an hour would be long enough, and we'd argued for longer, but the children were actually asking for longer than 2 hours at the end. And then the final event, of course, we presented at the Art Centre. So we had an evening event, well, late afternoon evening. And it was a public event, so we had it was broadly advertised, but obviously wanting the children and their families to come along to this. So we had an exhibition which presented some of the textiles that they'd been introduced to, as well as some African music, and it presented the work that they had produced. Some of which you see here. There's the work they did with Uthman. And then we also had activities. So both Shepherd and Z2 led drop-in workshops, and we had some, they could try their hand at stilt walking relating to the Moko Jumbi. And the ADF, the African Diaspora Foundation, also presented, they put on foods, they introduced the African and Ethiopian coffee ceremony, and had bead making in the gallery. And of course, we needed to bring in, we felt we needed to bring in some Moko Jumbis. So Levi, through her contacts, brought in a couple of Moko Jumbis, stilt walkers, to have there too, which really made the evening. And we are now in the final stages, just waiting for one more video to produce some school resources that will be distributed across Milton Keynes schools, which gives some practical ideas for how to, things that can be done quite easily in classroom to introduce ideas of African heritage through art. And we're really interested to hear from schools as to how they find it. And that's me.
Thanks, Fiona. Some lovely pictures in there, aren't there? Some great one. I met, I think, one of your artists too in one of the sessions. So really great. And I'm actually going to fortuitously pass over to Emily in just a moment, who's from the school that you worked with there. And Emily has a slightly unusual role. I'll let you talk about your role, Emily. But while you get yourself ready, just remind you, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat to individual presenters. That's probably the most helpful way. And do feel free to share any contacts, resources that you've got that way. Either you can private message each other that way, can't you, as well? So do that. Emily, why don't you tell us about what you've been doing at Brooklands Farm?
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Yes, I'm very, very lucky that I work in a school with staff and a head who is passionate about making community the school is at the heart of our community, and knowing that the school doesn't just kind of like, and the community doesn't stop at the school gates, but that it's much wider. And as you've seen, also like a taste from Fiona's presentation, also very kind of passionate about the art. So I consider myself very lucky, and one of my roles within the school is to kind of ensure that we are making those connections with the community. And because we are such a new school and a new community, we have new families arriving all the time. It's really important that everybody kind of feels welcomed and feels included and feels part of that community as soon as possible. And so I've been very, very lucky because in sometime last year, I think, I can't remember, COVID's like made time go funny, but recently anyway, I had the idea of having a walk around the community for any parents. All parents were welcome, and extended family and things, but targeting specifically newly arrived families. And whilst walking around the community, I could then show them different parts of the community. So for example, this is the health centre, this is the secondary school. We're a school on 2 sites, although we're one school. So some of our parents didn't even necessarily know how to get to the other site. So it might have just walked there. I took them also to the local children's centre and things like that. So they got to know landmarks, if you like, around the community. But they also then got to make connections and make friends with other people. And we're probably all aware of that phenomenon where sometimes in a school playground, some people find it difficult to make connections outside of their perceived identity. And so this way we had people from all communities, and they've made lots and lots of friends, lots of diverse friendship groups, which is really good. It's still going strong. We're also very lucky that we've been able to invite community role models. So, for example, we've had the anti-hate crime officer for Thames Valley Police join us on one. We've had head teachers and staff from supplementary schools, because our school community is so diverse. We know pupils are accessing a range of supplementary schools, so we want the families to know that we value their supplementary education as much as mainstream education. And indeed, very recently, Fiona accompanied us on one of our walks. And it's another way to just reinforce our love and our value of the arts to families. And you can see here, this is just a timetable from this kind of like half term. We've been very lucky to be accompanied by a range of people. Next Wednesday, for example, I know that the Heritage Learning Officer is going to take us to a local church, and we went there in September, and because we are very new, we're a new estate in a new town, everything is brand shiny new. So when we walked to this older part, which is kind of, you know, within walking distance of Broughton, and our family saw St Lawrence's Church, they were just overwhelmed. They just thought it was absolutely fantastic that they had this heritage and this history on their doorstep. They really enjoyed it. So I know that our Heritage Learning Officer this week is going to open up the church again, and she's going to invite parents to do some artwork, sketching, rubbings and things like that, just to make it a bit more interactive. So that's kind of, you know, one of the things that we've been able to do to help families ensure that they feel part of the community. And then also we can follow that up then with all of the events that we are so lucky that are held all over Milton Keynes all of the time, you know, such as the great workshops and family events that Fiona and her organisation runs. We can then advertise that again to our families and, you know, invite them along. So yeah, that's kind of like the walking thing that we do with them. But just going back to, thank you, you read my mind, Jez. Just going back to kind of this slide, this was something I originally created when I worked for EMA Network, but then I've kind of like adapted it to make it Brooklands Farms-ish, and had a look, because there are lots of things that we do to try and go that little bit of extra mile and make sure that new families feel welcomed. And I should say that it says here, including bilingual families, because this induction process that we implement for all children. Obviously there are things on there that are specific to bilingual children, such as the acquisition of academic language, but you know, we do this for all pupils, just make sure that they feel settled, that they feel part of our community. And we've also been running ESOL classes for parents on both of our sites, and they have been really, really well received. And in fact, some of our parents on one site have already asked if they can come back next term. They don't want to stop. They really enjoyed it. So yeah, that's just some of the things that we do to welcome them.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emily, so much. Really interesting to see a school that's so connected with its parents, or particularly the parents who find it more difficult to engage in different ways. So I think I might send some of my colleagues to see you next year, if that's all right.
Of course.
And see what you're doing. Let me stop sharing that. Really pleased that we've got Jo Trevanna with us today. Jo's a former head teacher and now works in this area more widely. So Jo, I'll let you say what you introduce yourself a little bit, but delighted you could join us this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that intro, Jez, and thank you very much for accepting me as part of this group. I realised that I wasn't here last time, so I'm an interloper, so please forgive me for that. I did send through a document that will hopefully be shared. I don't know if that's possible, Jez. because what I wanted to do was to share an obsession, really. I have an obsession about the Equality Act, and within that, tragically, I have a further obsession with the public sector equality duty. And that doesn't roll off the tongue easily. Now, this is something that any public body anywhere in England should be aware of. And what this means is that we should, as public bodies, be sharing information about how we understand the responsibilities of a public body to make sure that we are aware of and we comply with the Equality Act. Now, this piece of legislation isn't necessarily that well known, and there was some wriggle room given to public bodies during the COVID period, but there should be available on your websites, if you are a public service, if you are a publicly funded body, objectives, and those objectives should be around the equalities work that you are doing in your institution. And those should be updated every 4 years. Within that, those objectives should be measurable, of course, and they should make sure that you can prove you understand what you need to do as a public body. So all of this sounds very dry, and it may well be, but it's incredibly important for organisations that really want to demonstrate that they are on top of legislation and that they really have a handle on the equalities work that is going on in their schools or in their organisations, because if it's publicly funded, there is a likelihood that you should be publishing this information. On this document, I've given you some background information. And I've given, for example, some very school-based, forgive me, they are very school-based objectives that would meet the requirements of this piece of legislation and this piece of guidance. And you can see that around the sample work that's done there. There also needs to be published some information surrounding the implications of your institutions or your organisation's policies on people with protected characteristics. The Equality Act is all about protected characteristics, and as a publicly funded body, you need to show that you are complying with that. The understanding of protected characteristics is very much at the heart of what you do, and you have a plan to deal with those. So there's lots of work that is happening around and about in schools and other organisations and other institutions, but it's about making sure that that work is fully represented to any particular body that might come in and have a look. So worst case scenario, and forgive me, I'm going to go with worst case at this point. Something were to happen in one of your organisations and there is an investigation into what happened. And if you are not compliant on your website, for example, with the PSED, that would start flagging up as an issue more and more. The more you can do to be compliant, and it won't take very long, the better you can do, because it protects you against people saying that you have not paid attention to the Equality Act, you have not paid attention specifically to the PSED, which is part of the Equality Act, section 149. So what I've done is I've done a crib sheet. This isn't to scare anybody. Some of you will have this organised already, but if you need any more help or advice or guidance with this, I am more than happy to help. As Jess said, I'm just starting out on the springboard of consultancy. I have some time at the moment. I'm very keen to get some connections going on, and I have some availability. So if anybody is a little bit freaked out by what I've just said, forgive me. On a Thursday evening, it's not what I intended to do, but I am more than happy to help. On that document that Jez is sharing, there is an email address at the bottom there where you can get a hold of me and say, right, okay, not sure what you're talking about, any chance of a catch up. I will be more than happy to help.
Brilliant, thanks Jo very much. And Jo's very good at making complex things fairly simple. So we'll do that in a really nice way. If that's helpful for anybody, do get in touch with Jo. We didn't say earlier on, but of course the protected characteristics are, I can't remember how many there are, Jo, 6 or 7, aren't there? And there's a range of different things: sexuality, disability, age, gender, race. And in this group, we are trying to consider all of those different areas. And some of those we kind of drawn to naturally, perhaps in our schools, and maybe not others. It's good to think about the range of protected characteristics, I think, in terms of our qualities and provision in that area.
Yeah, just for reference, there's 9.
9, thank
Do
you.
a quiz.
I did quite well. Sexual orientation and transgender, what do we call that one?
Gender reassignment.
Gender reassignment, thank you very much. There we go. I nearly got them all. Elizabeth, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Jez. Yeah, so as Jez mentioned at the start of the symposium, I work for the Arts and Heritage Alliance, and we're the lead organisation for MAKE, and you can see MAKE's logo behind me there. But today I'm going to talk about the Arts and Heritage Alliance's artist commissions that we're doing with 6 different communities in Milton Keynes. So I'm just going to share my screen here. We're working with we had a large strategic grant from Milton Keynes Community Foundation. And this was to work with 6 different community groups and link them with the sector. It was off the back of some research that we did in 2019, which informed us that the arts and heritage sector needed to work hard to become more inclusive and diverse. So we applied for our large strategic grant and we were successful. So this is the organizations in the middle there are the ones that we're working with currently. With the African Diaspora Foundation, sorry, let me just move on. We're working with the artist that Fiona mentioned earlier, Levi Naidu Mitchell, and she is creating a costume and textiles piece, which is going to go into their African Diaspora Festival on the 2nd of July, and that's in Campbell Park. We're working with the Middle Eastern group on Middle Eastern interior design project that's going to be at MK Gallery during August. We worked with the Conabura community on a series of happenings, which were sort of surreal events that took the community by surprise and brought a little bit of joy to the community and started conversations around art. With Camp Hill community, we're doing a pantomime, which is going to be performed tomorrow and on Tuesday of next week. With the Abrahamic women, we're working on a sort of a visual art piece, which will be an arch shape that represents the 3 different communities. You can see them here working at MK Museum in the Blacksmith's Forge and at the printing press, and just doing different workshops there. And we're also working with the Hindu Association on a project about yoga and spirituality, and that's going to be at the MK Gallery in August as well. So we wanted to work on these projects so that the sector would become more culturally responsive and informed, and also give opportunities for people from these communities to succeed and thrive, not only in the arts and heritage sector, but also in the world in general. As the project aims to enhance cultural awareness, build a sense of identity that links to positive narratives of Milton Keynes, and foster inclusion. We recruited these different artists to work with the communities and investigate the people of these communities and their stories, and really make a genuine link with those stories. The artists have run different workshops, getting to know the nuances of culture, and in particular the cultural references. We try to, the workshops encourage conversation between the groups, but also provide a way in for cultural organizations to get to know the communities in different ways. For example, the museum was really a brilliant partner in this. I mentioned the Abrahamic women and them working at the Blacksmith's Forge and the printing press, and they provided space for the Abrahamic women, and they're going to provide they're going to be the place where the arch is showcased, and they're also going to provide a space where all 6 projects can be sort of seen retrospectively sometime in the autumn. By providing those spaces, and also they came out to meet the different communities, they created new opportunities for themselves to work with the communities in the future beyond the artist projects. We tried to root the developing relationships in communication, because we know that communication is the key to a culturally aware community. Off the back of these artist commissions, we'd like to create some learning resources for teachers. Perhaps an art trail, or examples, maybe mini examples of the workshops that teachers could take into the classroom, and sort of draw out the stories of their pupils, and perhaps link into these art projects, and the history of these art projects as they will have already happened. We'd also like to encourage young people from diverse backgrounds to think about their status in the cultural sector and see it as an option for career development. So that's something that we really want to encourage through the Make network, that young people see the cultural sector as an opportunity, that they can actually work in the cultural sector, and that it is a good opportunity for career development. They can use skills such as organization and business, and they don't have to be an artist to work in this sector. And we'd like to encourage young people and teachers to come to networking events. I'm sort of telling you all this, even though it's not directly linked with schools at the moment, but it's because it's the value of sort of working with communities, and that there are these sort of opportunities for schools to get involved, and for schools to link in with different communities in this way, and how they work with the arts and heritage sector. And how different stories can be told through arts and heritage projects, and how those stories and how these projects really encourage inclusion and diversity. And because what happens in the community is sort of a mirror or a blueprint for what can happen in the classroom. We know that from a lot of research, cultural diversity and understanding cultural diversity leads to more empathy, because students can understand people and subject matters better, and they can also understand how to use their own strengths to contribute to a diverse working environment. So it's sort of skills for the future as well. People become more open-minded and open to new ideas, and attain greater comprehension by taking in different points of view. And that was a good example from the Abrahamic women, was that one person who was part of this group said that she joined that group because she really wanted to know what to say around a Muslim person, because she didn't have any Muslim friends, and she was Christian, and she didn't want to make any mistakes. So she thought that by joining this group, this would enable her to be more comfortable in talking about particular topics, and know what the sensitivities were, and then know where what she might have thought were taboos weren't taboos at all. These sort of projects help people to feel more confident and safe, and interact with a wider range of social groups, and feel confident in themselves and with others. And as I said before, it prepares people to become part of a more diverse workforce, which we are becoming, and will continue to become. Because hearing about cultural awareness sets us up for flourishment, and for being able to communicate well with others. So we're still, in these final stages of this project, but we really would like to link in with schools and link in with teachers, and hear what sort of resources might be useful for you, that we can share with you. So I'm going to pop my email address in the chat, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Elizabeth. You can see there's loads and loads of things going on. The function of MAKE, Cultural Education Partnerships, is to put schools and artists and heritage organisations and cultural organisations in contact with each other. It's essentially a network, and Elizabeth is the heart of that. So if you want to know, whatever your organisation is, if you want to get in touch with people, come to a MAKE meeting, get in contact with Elizabeth. Her email's there in the chat. She knows pretty much everybody in this area in Milton Keynes. And if you want to know anything about the kind of region a bit more widely, Eleanor Markland, who works for Artswork, is a bit more aware of what's happening kind of in the rest of our local areas, or Buckinghamshire side that way. So do get in touch with Eleanor as well. I'm sure she won't mind me saying that. Although your role is changing slightly, Eleanor, isn't it, in the near future? But
well, ultimately, but for the rest of the financial year, I will carry on carrying on. I'll put my email in the chat to
great, thank you
for everyone.
And we're going to hear from the last of our schools this afternoon. So I'm going to ask Tola to present in a moment. Tola was in our session last time, I think, Tola, and there's a good amount of work at Radcliffe School. So why don't you introduce what you've been doing there? Thanks, Tola.
Thank you. Could you please help me display the PowerPoint from your end as well? My name is Sola Alibeshu, and I'm the Ethnic Minority Achievement Coordinator at the Radcliffe School. I am also the acting Senko at the moment, and I'm quite passionate about diversity and inclusion in our curriculum. So last year when I attended, I made notes about with a lot of things that was going on around the schools, around MK. And when I came back, I kind of shared this with the curriculum team leaders, and I asked them, challenged them to go and look at their different curriculum areas and look at how we could be more diverse and inclusive in what we're doing, what we're teaching. So this year, I kind of asked for feedback to share with you. So I'm starting with social sciences, where they've been looking at, in psychology, they are currently looking at cultural topics that sort of go around how to prevent cultural bias, looking at things like gender and education, social class differences, looking at gender and inequalities, looking at family and diversities. And in modern foreign language, students have been looking at learning about different cultures and countries, even though as well as the language that they are learning. And also as part of the modern foreign language as well, students, we have what we call the first language ambassadors sessions, where students have the opportunity to actually celebrate their own language by teaching other students. Also, we've got a modern foreign language film club, whereby different films are shown in different languages. And from next one, please, thank you. From humanities and in geography, students are looking at African slavery and looking at it from different angles so that people are aware of what they need to understand around the topic, so that what needs to be discussed is actually discussed. And in year 9, students are looking at topics sort of like studying diversity, Britain, looking at LGBTQ, Black Britain, civil rights women. And in geography, as well as looking at the curriculum, they are exploring different places and different people and investigating different cultures. And in RE, through looking at different religion, students are also investigating different cultures that are represented around the school. And in last year, one of the things that I found was the fact that a lot of things that we were doing in English was not diversified at all. So, and since I've been back, we've looked at the curriculum to look at how we could diversify it. So a lot of the text that we were teaching initially, we've had to replace. So for example, in year 7, we're looking at Antigone, which is looking at Greek tragedy. In year 8, we're looking at A View from the Bridge, where a lot of topics that are quite diverse from culture to culture is being explored. So for example, some things that might be appropriate in one culture might be seen as inappropriate in another culture. In year 9, we're looking at poems from different cultures, whereby we're discussing topics around identity, race, culture, discrimination. And the Key Stage 4 curriculum, we tend to link it with context so that students look at diverse topics around gender, race, inequalities, families and relationship, disabilities, so that when they are confronted with where they need to interact with other students, they are well educated to understand the fact that we have to celebrate one another and celebrate the diversity that we bring into the classroom, even though it's part of the English curriculum. And in humanities, when they are looking at different case studies of earthquake around the world, also linking it to how things are different across the culture. Sorry, I'm having to rush. I'm aware that we are running out of time. And in drama, for example, students have been looking at prejudice in Holocaust, Broken Britain, the London riot, and the reasons behind it, and looking at education benefits, stops, and why some things happen and how we need to approach it in a much more inclusive and diverse way. From science last year was one of the areas where there was nothing that was diverse. So this year, we're looking at displays that celebrate women in STEM, so that, and from September, the curriculum is changing slightly, whereby they are looking at scientists from different cultures like Afro-American, Arabic scientists. And the same thing too in maths too. Obviously, it was quite tricky to make it more diverse. So the display there is showcasing different mathematicians from around the world, so that students can understand the fact that even though you might not be able to diversify the topics that you're looking at, look at the fact that mathematicians are all over the world. And from the library, I've got a display there. The first one is a display that we had previously celebrating LGBTQ+, so that we're encouraging, and the next one is Pride, so that we're encouraging students to pick up books that explore different issues around all of this, so that students are much more aware. And to finish off, after I collated the views from the curriculum team leaders, I thought I would have the students' viewpoint as well. So there's a short video that is coming on whereby students are actually sharing their views on what they think we're doing around the school that is quite inclusive and how we're promoting diversity across the school. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nanda and I'm in year 12. I'm Ganga, I'm also in year 12. So we asked our students about what they think about diversity and inclusion at the Radcliffe School. Adnan in year 10 says that I think that Radcliffe School is one of the most diverse schools in the Milton Keynes. It has opportunities for many cultures and people of different races. Our school has recently provided holidays for Muslim students for Eid and rooms to pray during Ramadan. When it comes to any ethnic minority enrolling into the Radcliffe School, there is such an amazing system which supports them in their learning, and this results into successful students, as most of them can hit the target rate or even exceed to it. Year 10 Musa says that he thinks the Radcliffe School is very diverse and takes a lot of students from different countries around the world, leaving no one to be left out even if they don't speak English. Radcliffe School answers them and let them learn. Year 8 Iman says that I think that this school is diverse because it allows other cultures to come in and they welcome different types of students. Year 9 Neda says that in her opinion, this school is diverse. There are lots of people from different countries that are in my school. I have noticed many people joining who are new to England in general. I've seen people with all types of culture, and remember seeing in the hall on TV and the embracing of everyone's culture. Yana Vasila says that holidays to celebrate Eid are welcomed, and so is different cultures. Year 7 Mode says that she feels that the Radcliffe School's diversity is good. The students are very welcoming and have no feelings of discomfort against others. Inclusion in the Radcliffe School is also very good. People from different cultures are able to mix and blend easily together. I feel that diversity and inclusion in the Radcliffe School is excellent. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole Cheatham and I'm in year 11. Our school is very diverse. Throughout my 5 years here, I've had the opportunities to share my culture with others and learn about their own. For example, the languages department lets us teach a lesson in our native languages and learn the languages of others every single year.
Thank you.
Fabulous, Tola. As you can see, loads and loads of things have been going on. So really well done for that. And that's great. We've got one more from speaker from an organisation, and then I'm going to hand over to Fidel in a moment. Before that, Noel from the City Discovery Centre. I'll let you introduce your project, Noel. Thanks for joining us.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I can only really join you just for this little bit. I've got COVID and I'm not very well, and I'm also on leave, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to everyone. So thank you very much for having me. I'm the director of Milton Keynes City Discovery Centre, which some of you might know about from school visits or from the community garden, or the fact that we're based at Bradwell Abbey, which is a 12th century monastery, or the remains thereof. We run an education programme for all ages, primary school upwards through secondary school, through professional and university. Primary school, we focus mainly on heritage or history experience and geography. Secondary school is mainly geography. Beyond that, professional and university is generally things like town planning. We hold the archive for the new town of Milton, oh, I beg your pardon, for the new city of Milton Keynes, but we hold the actual Development Corporation archive, a large part thereof. So we get a lot of people coming to us to look at maps and so on. So when Elizabeth asked me if I would have a quick slot today, and if I could think of anything we did that would perhaps illustrate the diversity that we promote when we teach, I thought of a couple of examples. And the first one that came to mind was actually just after Elizabeth approached me. We had done a Viking session with some 8-year-olds. Vikings is one of our very popular sessions that we teach. And you might wonder how you can make that diverse. Vikings, aren't they? Also, we think you have a very sort of generic image of what Vikings might look like, you know, big red bushy beards, long blonde hair and so on. It's an interesting topic to approach. I'm studying archaeology part-time, and recently was uncovered the grave of a very high status Viking warrior in a place called Berka in Sweden, thought to be the highest echelon of male warriorness, possibly royal, burial with several high status weapons, including very deadly male piercing armor, lots of rich grave goods, all based on military skill. A lot of the grave goods suggested that this body was a military strategist and leader, probably a war leader. This grave was discovered over 100 years ago. About 5 years ago, an osteologist suggested that the bones might be those of a woman, and this caused a great deal of outcry amongst many learned scholars. The bones are DNA tested, and is in fact the grave of a woman, the body of a woman, and the weapons in that grave are to scale to her body shape and her size, and the proximity of them to the body, it's almost indisputable. They are her weapons, and they're proper war weapons. The reason I raise this is in the Viking session that we do archaeology, and I bring this in using real Viking artifacts. We lay out, using a fake skeleton, we actually lay out her grave and talk to the kids about, you know, who these might belong to. And it's interesting that the kids are very open to the fact that this could well actually be a female grave. When I do the session, I'm actually dressed as the female warrior. And so we talk about gender roles, and you know, who is there such a thing as a Viking female warrior? Often open to debate. But it's pretty indisputable. There have been several remains of bodies discovered, female bodies with war injuries and with weapons. There's a lot of written suggestion as well. So we bring this into our session. If I can just flip my screen around, is it possible? I don't know how to do this. I just want to show you our Viking pack. Can I flip my screen?
I'm not sure. You can share.
How do I do that?
So you
oh, no.
No.
Oh, actually, it's probably easier if I don't, because it's on another laptop.
Okay.
But when we do our sessions, we also have quite fun written material that we show or we give out to the schools and kids as well, that kind of detail what we've covered. And in those we have fun illustrations. So we've made sure that in all of the packs, Viking, Roman, Victorian, all of them, that the illustrations show both male and females in reversible roles. So we have images of female warriors and so on, and we can explain those things. And it's like we also make sure we have diversity of colour. So we have people of colour in the packs as well, which you'd expect us to have. But it's a good opportunity to explain to the kids that there are actually Black Roman legions, which people don't know about. There's also Roman legions that were entirely made up of left-handers, all different types of diversity. You know, I digress slightly. The anecdote I really wanted to tell you about was when we did this Viking session the other week. We always start off with a timeline, and we get all the sort of major monarchs through time that the kids will recognise from school, and we have crowns or hats or shields or swords or whatever they might be associated with, and we ask the kids who wants to be this person. And when we did this session, we had Queen Elizabeth II was very popular, obviously because of the Jubilee. So we had a Black Queen Elizabeth II, and then we had the person who wanted to be Queen Elizabeth, no, who wanted to be Queen Victoria, was a young African lad, and it was entirely normal. Nobody giggled that a boy wanted to be Queen Victoria. We had a young girl wanted to be King Radwald, who is the famous Anglo-Saxon Sutton II helmet. We had the female King Alfred the Great. And as we put the crowns on the kids or gave them the weapons, they didn't think anything of it. They thought it was very cool to be able to be the role of a king or queen or the person in history that they admired. So we use that as a discussion point about what, we don't go into gender roles as such. Those kids are young. They don't consider it something to break down into those terms. So we don't, but we always say, well, you can be any role you want to be. You can have any job you want to have. Any girl can pick up a sword if she wants to be a shield maiden, or if she wants to take on that role. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you're a girl or a boy. It has to do with the person you are and what you want to do. And they understand that very clearly. So we use that as a way to get rid of the sexism and the lack of diversity in how history can be taught. And the archaeology example is useful because often, and you don't really go into too much detail in archaeology with primary school kids, but if kids go on to be archaeology or look at archaeological sources, a lot of history and archaeology defines people's roles in society through their biological sex. And that is usually defined through the grave goods, what they're buried with. And that is very inexact. A lot of male remains are buried with what you might typically think are female grave goods, and vice versa, as proven by the Berka warrior. So it's a very easy way to bring in ideas of gender parity, gender equality, gender difference, but the fact that difference makes no difference, we're all people. and we should all be given the opportunity to do what we want to do without any kind of discrimination. So as I haven't, I'm afraid I haven't been very articulate in what I wanted to say. I do have COVID brain at the moment, but I hope that has, I hope that's been helpful. And if anyone would like to book any of our sessions or be sent out our teaching packs on any of the history areas that we do, you can contact me on director@mkcdc.org.uk. I should be back in the office at the beginning of July. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Noah. We really appreciate you coming, especially when you're on leave and ill at the same time.
Yeah.
So well done.
If you don't mind, I'll go now.
Yeah, do disappear. But I hope you feel better soon. But lovely
Thank
to.
you very much. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
So I've just got one more colleague that we're going to hear from this evening briefly, and that's Fidel. Fidel works for Open University, and Fidel actually weren't meant to be here today. Well, you meant to be in Birmingham, but thankfully the train got cancelled, so he couldn't go. Is that roughly the story?
That's the story, and in a way, I'm glad actually, because if it wasn't the story, Jez, what I would have done is to send presentation slides, and I have realized I would have sent the wrong message. Having come in and listened to what people had to say, very clearly we are talking about education/arts and diversity. So let me stick to that one and maybe share a few stories of things I've been up to, and then I can talk about the research I'm interested in and how it connects to schools. So starting with art. I am new to MK. Maybe a few people might beat me, but I'm only here for 8 years. And when I was new, in the autumn of 2014, I happened to attend the launch of Vital Signs. This is a report which is published by MK Community Foundation once per year. It was, as it happens, at the Christian Center in Oldbrook. And I noted with horror that there had been an increase this 2014 in hate-motivated crimes motivated by race and religion. So that one took me aback a little bit, because I had moved here from Dublin, Ireland, and I thought I moved to a diverse city. It was a town at the time. And obviously, it means diversity and equality are in the works. They are never, so it's a project, it's never achieved. So a few years down the line, then myself and a few colleagues, we launched a campaign which was called, Fight Against Hate. It was done through Citizens MK. And interestingly enough, we thought the best way to engage on this particular topic of hate and diversity was to engage with young people. So in 2017, one of the projects we did launch, which was interesting, was to launch a campaign on in a competition on posters, and we got a few schools in MK involved. So the posters were exhibited at the Open University in the library. Subsequently, we produced some banners using 4 images of those posters. It was displayed outside the Church of Christ, the Cornerstone, next to the shopping center. And subsequently, this work was displayed in Jubilee Wood Primary School. So as if that wasn't enough, we subsequently, the following year, that's 2018, 2019, we did some work which resulted in a competition in schools where we called it Singing for Harmony. So if you think about diversity and differences, it means, we don't have harmony, so we can use music to create opportunities for harmony. Again, it went well, so we had the music, the competition, as it were, not a competition because everybody who entered the competition won at the Open University at the time. Suffice to say that this work, because of the involvement of young people and the fact that the Summerfield Primary School did actually compose a song, which was We Built This City, called MK, and then we were talking about diversity and so forth. And we ended up getting BBC Low Kist come to Milton Keynes to come and cover the work we had been doing in schools. So in other words, I believe that it is difficult to sort of to change or to teach, how do you call it? Is it an old dog, new tricks? It's easier to work with young people because young people are innocent. And I'm saying it as a parent. I'm aware that the kids don't realize how different they are until actually they go out to school and people start telling them they are different, and eventually then they start becoming different. But children as such, when they are young, they don't know any different. Anybody is their friends. Going back then to the Open University, at the moment we are doing some research which might be of interest. We are doing some work on financial literacy. And we are specifically looking at students who are either about to leave school, i.e. they are finishing their GCSE, or if they are in the process of doing their A levels. The idea is to take children from mainly ethnic minorities and explore what they know or don't know about how financially literate they are. Because if somebody is going to leave school tomorrow, they need to know how to run a budget. If you go to university, you have to pay for your accommodation, your food, and so forth. So thankfully, I have to say that it looks as if Sheni Brookend and St. Paul's are going to let us in. So in the process of actually going around and doing some research in those schools. Then wearing my Open University hat, I am particularly interested in researching voluntary sector organizations led by Black and ethnic minorities. It's not an obsession, but it will come back to what I said earlier, because I have realized that if we need to talk about groups, we need to have those groups inside the tent. So we can't just talk about groups if they are not represented around us. And what I have seen, this based on personal experience, a few times I have been invited to events, and people will assume because I'm Black, I represent Black communities, even if I have no involvement whatsoever in a Black and ethnic minority organization. There be an assumption that if you talk to me, you are talking my message, your message will be relayed to other people. And I contend that some among those leaders might be gatekeepers rather than people who build bridges. So, and that's what I've been trying to unpack. We started in 2020 with an initial project. Now we have evolved, and now I'm already thinking about what I'm going to do in the next academic year. But the essence of it is to try to understand what we can do to help schools, for example, in getting diversity within the school governors. And I know I've done some work with MK Council to try to relay the message, organizing workshops, get Black and ethnic minorities involved in planning and so forth. Because unless we do that, obviously we have the usual suspect around the room. And for me, I don't feel comfortable with it being the person who is always there, who is seen to represent communities which I don't necessarily represent. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'd be more than happy to say more to anybody who is interested
Thank you. Thanks.
in knowing more about the research. Thank you.
Thanks, Fidel, very much. And you've put your email in the chat, haven't you? That
Yes.
issue about governance, I think, is really important for all of our organisations. We know that our school workforce body doesn't represent the community. It isn't representative of the community that we're in, and that's probably true of our governing body as well. And we can take active steps to redress that. So I'd encourage you to do that. That kind of brings us to the end this afternoon. I hope some of that has been useful. If you take one or two things away from this afternoon, one or two contacts or ideas, then I hope that is of help to you. We will put all of this up on the two websites, on the AHA website with the resources, and if you just go onto YouTube and search for MK Diverse City, you should find the presentations from last year and this year as well when I get them up there. So please do search on YouTube for MK diverse city. I wonder what the one thing that you're going to go back into your organization and do is now. I'm not going to ask you to share that in the chat unless you particularly want to, but just take a moment to think, what's the one conversation that you need to have, the one action that you need to take in order to try and increase inclusion, diversity, and equality in your organization? Just to finally promote the two dates with you. We've got a meeting for Make in a couple of weeks' time. Elizabeth, you'll remind me the date, I think probably. It's
the 7th of July.
July the 7th at the Leadership and Training Centre based at Shenybrook End School. It's 4 o'clock. We are meeting in person with cake, and anybody is welcome to come and join us there. And in particular on that meeting, whether you're from a school background or from an arts organisation background, heritage organisation, we're going to be thinking about a get together in October. We've been planning this for several years and we haven't managed to do it yet, partly, well, we all know why. But hopefully on 20th of October, we will have an event where we celebrate some of the different types of artistic presentations, productions, performances that are going on in our schools and in our organisations. And it's a chance for schools and organisations just to make connections, see what's going on, share each other's learning, not specifically about inclusion and equality, that one, it's just generally about the arts. So please do get involved. We will send some information around about it, but put the date in your diary if you can, 20th of October, and we hope to see lots of you there. And if you're from a school background in particular, we know that school planning takes a long time, so please pass that date to your relevant colleague in school in charge of performing arts or visual arts, so that we can hopefully get some pupils and some students from different schools as well. Would be great if we can organise that. Other than that, lovely to see you all. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon. It's a rainy day, so you haven't missed the sunshine, so that's good, but it is Thursday. And you all deserve a bit of time off, so go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Elizabeth, anything you wanted to add before we close?
No, just thank you very much to everyone for coming and for speaking as well.
Thanks for all those contributions for everybody, really appreciate it, and good night, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.